Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Emma Cunnington and I am a woodwind tutor who specialises in clarinet, saxophone and flute. Today's video is going to be on how to put together your clarinet, how to put your reed on the mouthpiece and any little cleaning things that you might need to know for the duration of your clarinet journey. So we will begin with how to put your reed on the mouthpiece. So this section of the video is going to be on how to assemble your mouthpiece and your reed. So your reed, you might have noticed from a previous video I did on clarinet hints and tips. If you're a beginner, 1.5 Van Doren or a 2 Rico Royale would be what I'd recommend you start on. Once you've got your reed, it will come in probably a little packet if it's a Van Doren or just in a little plastic case if it's a Rico. And if you've got a Van Doren, open the packet, take it out of the case. Make sure you hold it by the side for the Van Doren cases. If it's a Rico, you have to pull it from the bottom. Make sure you're holding the reed from the side or the bottom, never this top bit that's a little bit thinner, you might be able to see. This is just because it's the thinnest part. If you damage this tip of the reed, if you touched it very forcefully, you won't be able to get a good sound out. You'll be squeaking. So try not to damage this top bit here. Okay, so once you've got it, you're going to stick the reed in your mouth for about 10 seconds. 10 seconds, etc. We'll pass. But just as a quick way, just to show you, just for the sake of it, I've wet my reed. You're then going to touch it with the sides. And the reason we wet our reed, by the way, is so that it's ready for you to play it. It's also so that you can get kind of a good connection between the reed and the mouthpiece. If you don't wet your reed beforehand, you might be a bit squeaky. The air is kind of going down the main face of the reed. It's not good. You need to make sure you're kind of lubricating those fibres so they're ready to vibrate when you're kind of blowing down the reed. So get your reed, get your mouthpiece. You're going to stick your reed on it just generally like so. Now I've done this quite well initially, but you need to make sure that your reed is flat and you need to make sure that it's kind of in the centre of the mouthpiece. Now, if you've got a stock mouthpiece, you'll notice that there's kind of a flat bit. You're going to line up your reed in the middle of that flat bit. On mine, you can see it kind of goes inward, so I'm lining up my edges with that. But also at the top, I need to have a line, literally a hair width of black, which I haven't currently got, so I'm going to change it. So you'll see what I mean in a moment. This is just so you've got enough of a gap for the air that you're going to blow down the clarinet to go down the mouthpiece. So a little hair width of black. There we go, that's about spot on. Hopefully it won't move. There we go. So literally the teeniest bit of black. It's all lined up, ready to go. So holding that reed on the mouthpiece, you're going to grab your ligature. Now, pre-loosen it before. This is something that I actually haven't done, so because I'm so used to using my other ligatures, but pre-loosen it. Make sure that you've loosened it fairly well. You're going to make sure that your screws are facing you and that the screws are on the right. So you're going to gently place it over the top, making sure not to catch the top bit. Hold the reed, make sure you're not holding that top, but just anywhere on the reed, and push it down a fair little bit. Now, the place at which you put your ligature, sometimes mouthpieces will have little lines on them. Mine's got a tiny line you might be able to see. That little ridge where it recommends you put your ligature. I always tell my students you should put it about 1 millimetre below the waxy wood which is on your reed. So there's kind of like a bit of waxy reed. 1 millimetre below that will do the job. And you need to tighten it until it's firm. But if you tighten it any more, it'd be getting particularly tight. So firm, but not excessively tight. So I'm just going to... One thing that sometimes happens with some of these ligatures is it'll move up as you're doing it. So you might have to keep adjusting and pushing it down as I am doing here. But look, aiming for that 1 millimetre of waxy wood above the ligature. So tighten it until it's firm, but not really excessively tight. So firm, you know, it gets a little bit harder, but not anywhere past that point. So that is about spot on. So this mouthpiece it's just one of my personal mouthpieces. It'll be easy to put on a stock mouthpiece because the face will be flatter and it will just be slightly easier in this one. It's a little bit more refined, this mouthpiece. So you notice mine's slightly off to the right, so I would need to go push it in a little bit more. But the top is absolutely spot on. I'm just not quite in line at the bottom, so that is something I could adjust. But once you've got your mouthpiece sorted, I would stick very carefully your mouthpiece protector or your cover over the top and leave it to one side whilst you get the other bits sorted. Now I'm just going to do this again, but with a different ligature. So if you've got a ligature like a Rovner one, just watch this next clip. Okay, so wet my reed again, it's ready to go. This is if you've got a Rovner. Same process, touch the reed by the bottom at all times, place it onto your mouthpiece, maybe push it up from the bottom so that you can kind of get it up to that right level. Make sure it's in the centre and aim for that hair's width of kind of black at the very top of the reed. So I'm just going to make sure I get that absolutely spot on so I can show you all. That should be about right there. So a little bit of black at the top and it's in the centre. This time your ligature is going on and the screw's going to be on the right again, but it's going to be on top of the mouthpiece as opposed to kind of facing you. So gently again, wham it over, holding the reed not at the top at this end, but you can hold it anywhere on this kind of flat edge. And you're going to push your ligature down again until you've kind of got that millimetre, maybe 2 millimetres width of waxy wood that you can see. If you've got my particular ligature type, which is a Rovner Classic, I would try and get the reed to be in between both of the little holes that it has on it. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So getting the reed to be in between these two little holes kind of as equal as possible. Now, again, my reed is slightly moved over, so I'm going to push it at the very bottom. Push it at the very bottom so that it's in the middle of the mouthpiece again. If your reed goes too far up, don't be tempted to push it down. So right now, it's too high, way too high. So I'm going to push the ligature up a bit and kind of pull it down on its main surface or shimmy it down from the bottom until it's at the right level. So these ligatures are good. As mentioned in other videos, they create a darker sound and they're quite versatile. So once it's at that kind of 1 or 2 millimeters below that waxy wood and it's all in line, you've got that hair width with it at the top, it's in the middle. Tighten up again until it is firm, but not too tight. I don't want to be squeezing the mouthpiece and the reed too much. So right now I've tightened it till it's firm, but not too tight. So this one's ready to go. Grab your mouthpiece cover, be careful not to jam it in. There we go. So that is your mouthpiece ready to go. Okay, so this part of the video is going to be on how to put together your clarinet. And the bit which I would start with is your bell. So your bell goes at the bottom, and this is under the assumption, of course, the entirety of this section that you've cleaned, greased, etc. your clarinet. Next bit of the video will be on that after we put it together, if you're not sure. So you're going to grab your bottom joint, which is the bit that has a few keys here and a few at the bottom. Looks kind of nice and pretty, I think. And you're going to grab the bell and this bit. Now you're going to hold it, making sure not to be holding these keys in your palm. You don't want to be doing that. Try not to put your 3 fingers down where the 3 finger holes are and put the thumb rest in the kind of the V of your hand. Do that and give it a quick twist on, and then it should be on. Now I would, if I were you, line up the logos so that you've got them in line. This is because the manufacturers made the instrument to be played at its kind of optimal sound or optimal performance. When they're all in line, that's where the manufacturer recommends them to be for the instrument. So I would go with what they recommend. Okay, so the next bit is adding on your top joint. Now this is really important because you could break your clarinet if you don't do this correctly. So on your top joint, you may notice there's a little bit of a kind of a foot. And if you press one of these top keys, it goes up. On the bit you just put together, there's kind of the opposite of that. Another one that goes up as well. So you are going to grab your bottom half, making sure to put it in the same position as it was before. Your rest in the V of your hand and your 3 fingers on the 3 keys. And then your left hand, grab your clarinet I always try and make sure I'm not holding onto that G sharp key where possible. Depends how big your hands are though. And then putting my hands over the clarinet, over those keys, so I'm not catching on anything. So not catching anything at all. You're going to press down on those keys so that little lever goes up, and not press down on these keys. So you're going to have to kind of let the main bit of the clarinet be held by that thumb rest in the back. And you're going to gently slide it on so that that top bit goes over that bottom bit there. So the top bit's over the bottom bit. This is because when you press the bottom notes, that lever goes up and it seals one of these little keys down here. So that is putting together those bits here. And just like I said, make sure they're all lined up. You'll see there's two little lines on this. Make sure that's directly kind of in line with the bottom bit. So that's putting those together. So I would now at this point put your clarinet down on a table. So literally, we're not having any of this. We're not holding our clarinets like this, because then they can just go wee and fall over. So down on the table, grab your mouthpiece. You can leave the cap on if you want, but sometimes they can crush the reed, so that's why I'm taking mine off. Hold it in your hand, grab your barrel. So there's two ways up. You need to grab the way which, or the side which is slightly thinner. You're going to shimmy that one in again. So that's a little kind of shimmy downwards. Make sure that that logo is on the front. And then you're going to grab your clarinet, hold it, and then just shimmy it onto your clarinet so that then you've got it all sorted. So that's your clarinet there together. You can have a play of it. Isn't playing very well because I've got gloves on, but that's how you put together your clarinet. It should sound nice and free blowing. You can play on it for however long your practice is, and then it comes to putting it away, which is next section of this video will be on. Okay, so this next section is on how to put away your clarinet. You might have just been playing for a bit. Etc. This is how you put it away. So the first bit I would do is split them in half. So that bit that we had before, that bit where you could break your clarinet if you don't kind of, if you're not considerate of it, this bit here, we need to sort that out first so we don't get it wrong. So what I would do here is press down on these keys at the top. So press them down so that it lifts up that little lever slightly, and then unscrew and up. Put this to one side, then deal with this section. Barrel and the mouthpiece off, everything else in your hand, making sure you're not catching anything. Unscrew, done. Then this bottom bit, as before, hands in those holes, fingers in those holes, and then unscrew. Now, you could, if you wanted to, before this, pull through your clarinet as a whole. So using your pull through. You can do that. It's not something that I'd recommend doing all the way through your clarinet. You might do it in sections. So if you've got your bell and your bottom joint, you might decide to pull through this. I always tell students to pull it through the bottom so that you don't catch the keys at the top. So pull through your clarinet to get any condensation out of there, and that's done. You might pull through your top joint by itself. So like so. I do it like this again because you've got some keys at the bottom which could be accidentally, you know, get the thing stuck in, and then if you yank it, that's it, your key's going to probably be off your clarinet. So pull through like that. We're all done. Something that you might want to do as well if you've got a newer instrument, you might get recommended this in the shop, is blow through your top joint before you pull through it, just to get any little bits of condensation or spit from in your keys out of them. So it might be a bit of a messy thing to do, but I would recommend you doing that if you've got a newer instrument potentially, or leather pads, or just if you want to get those bits of spit or water from underneath your keys out. That's a good way to do it. And then after you kind of put this away, in its case, put all those little bits away, I would undo your reed from your ligature. Pull it off very gently. grab your reed, stick it in its case, so wherever that case is, stick it in it so that it can be safe. And then this is where some teachers don't tend to do this. I tend to do just to make sure that it's pulled through and it's cleaned. I put my pull through my mouthpiece and my barrel. Being very gentle with it though, so that then it's had a bit of a clean. Then unscrew, stick your mouthpiece and ligature back with its mouthpiece cap. That's all nice and safe. And then everything else should be back in its case as well. Now, if you've got silver plated keys, I've always recommended that you give your keys a little bit of a polish with a cleaning cloth. It could be your microfiber cleaning cloth if it's not particularly wet from the condensation. I'll give it a quick polish to get all the oils from your skin kind of off it. Equally, if you've bought a cleaning kit from Amazon or something like that that has a pull through included, you could use the gloves to polish the keys. Something that you could do. Those kinds of things. Now, we've put our clarinet away, we've cleaned it out, that's all fine, the reeds are away and everything. Something that you might need to do in between playings is something I mentioned earlier, greasing up your joints with either your bog standard cork grease or this oil grease. I'll show you how to do both. So you're going to grab the joint that needs greasing. So when I was putting together my clarinet, I noticed this one was a little bit hard to kind of push into the hole on the other end. You're going to grab it. Looks a bit like lipstick, but definitely don't put it on your lips. I've always been told by many music shops. You're going to kind of gently just rub it around. You might be able to see it just a little bit. Gently rub it, just a small amount. I'd go small and then top it up with it rather than just go and put a load on it. Just small little actions of it. Then grab your joint, the other one, as you were before, putting it together appropriately, so holding it in the right places. And then just give it a little bit of a shimmy around, making sure to hold down these top keys so that they don't clunk, because you'll hear it. It'll sound something like this. Don't want to do it almost, but it'll sound really horrible. Horrible clicking sound like that. If we're hearing that, no good. Make sure you're pressing them down. So I've shimmied that in, so now it goes into the joint a lot nicer. If you've got this other stuff, so this kind of trumpet grease by Bark, I think my bottom joint also was a little bit on the dry side. So what you'll do with that is let it gloop down. It might take a moment, and then give it a little bit of a run around on the joint. So if you can see that there, a little bit of run around. Now this stuff is quite long lasting, both in the jar or in the pot, and also just generally it seems to stick on the cork for a longer while. So same as before, hold your joint as you would do, so you're going to put it together and give it a little shimmy, and then that's nice and greased up, ready for when you next play. Now, with greasing your clarinet, there's a couple of things you need to bear in mind. If you are greasing this middle joint, don't grease it too often. I've had students who have held their clarinet together when they've been playing, and they've held it by this top bit, and after a bit of time, this clarinet gradually kind of falls without them knowing, and suddenly, whoosh, and it falls apart. That ended in these keys jamming together, and it was unplayable until it was able to be repaired. So with that middle joint, make sure you don't grease it too much, just a little will do. Again, with the bottom bit of your clarinet, I've had it before where the bell's fallen off on a bass clarinet I've been playing because there's been too much cork grease put on it. So with your bottom joint, just make sure it's enough to keep it kind of lubricated, but not too lubricated, because it could potentially fall off. Okay, so you also might need to put some on your mouthpiece. That's something that you might find over time you need to do. So don't forget about your mouthpiece. Make sure that that's kind of greased up, because what you don't want to happen is for these corks to expand and then for you to end up with a mouthpiece that's stuck in the barrel because it won't come out. So make sure that that's nice and kind of lubricated so it can be pulled off and on as and when it's needed. So that is all about kind of greasing your clarinet and the joints. Now the last bit of this video is just going to be a couple of little extras that you might need to consider. So as mentioned in the previous video, you may need to get your clarinet serviced every so often just to keep it in top tip kind of condition and a good kind of spec, so that it'll keep playing in an easy free blowing way. So look into local repairs shops. You could even send your clarinet to somewhere else in the country so that it can be repaired somewhere else. But I'd recommend you do service your clarinets just to keep them in that good condition, so that if anything looks like it's going to be breaking, or if there's something that's leaking and you don't quite know, it can be sorted in that service. In the previous video, I mentioned that it might be helpful having a packet of these. Now, the reason you may have a packet of these when you're playing a clarinet is so that when you have a key that has a bit of water underneath it, you can just very quickly go underneath the key. So if I grab my top joint, actually, say if I've got a bit of spit underneath this key, I just go underneath it with this, gently shimmer it around until it's gone. It can be very helpful for a quick fix, instead of having to take apart your entire clarinet or having to blow through the holes as so that then you can get that substance out. So that is just a little bit of something extra that you might need to think about when you're cleaning your clarinet. Thanks for watching this video. I really would appreciate it if you could like this video and subscribe if possible. Let me know if you found this helpful as well, or if there's anything that I haven't answered that you can think of, anything at all. Let me know in the comments, or find me at www.emma-music.co.uk and send me a message via the contact form or via the little messenger thing that I have at the bottom of the web page. I hope that this has been helpful and that you have a fantastic journey throughout your clarinet playing. Happy practicing, and I'll see you soon. Bye.